my satiation and joy, not just fight and dismantle.
Right. Like maybe one of the best things I can do for the climate is go to couples counseling. So then like you and I can have like a really good marriage, a really strong relationship, that I am not so dysregulated from my marriage that I then go have to do like a bunch of online shopping to try to, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because, I just think of like a lot of the consumption that we do is like how much of the consumption that we do is because of nervous system dysregulation. Hello and welcome to the Stoner Story Witch. My name is Kristen. I am so grateful to be hosting this podcast on the lands of the Chorotega people, colonially known as Costa Rica. I am really excited to share with you today's episode because it has been a delight for me. Today's episode is about the Netflix show Squid Game, which is a show that I remember my students talking about when season 1 came out, and just like reading about the hype and just knowing that for my sensitive nervous system, it was not a good fit for me. And so I have never watched any Squid Game aside from one scene that my husband Kevin had me watch in preparation for today's episode. But when season 2 came out, Kevin, my partner, watched season 1 and season 2, and I could tell that he was really moved by it. And we had just a couple of like little conversations around it. And I was sitting in the question of like, what would it look like to have him come on the show and have me not be the one responsible for like the mental labor of like figuring out all the connections and what's the outline. So today's episode, we flipped the script. So Kevin created a synopsis of both seasons. So obviously this episode contains spoilers for both season 1 as well as season 2 of Squid Game. So if you are sensitive to spoilers, I invite you to stop listening and come back if you wish to come back at another time. And we just riff on themes of capitalism and binary thinking and asking the question of, when is it going to be enough? Capitalism trains us to constantly be reaching for more, bigger, at great expense to the land and to people. And this show seems to me, I still haven't watched it, not going to watch it, seems like such a great metaphor for lots of things. So we really get into it. And also what's super fun about this episode is like, I'm not even the one editing it. Kevin is like, he has directed, produced, and it was super fun to just almost be like a guest on my own podcast, if that makes any sense. So, I'm just recording intros and outros, and then I am going to like actually be a listener of my own podcast. I'm really looking forward. I'm going to post it on the feed so that I can like listen to it on my podcast feed, just like everyone else. And so that just feels, I feel like a bounciness in my shoulders, and like I can't stop smiling because it just feels really sweet. I've had Kevin on the podcast a few times before, and for better or worse, through thick and thin. And this was just a really, really fun way to just kind of like play around with what can this podcast be? All right, shall we just trust that it sounds good?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so then we can just begin. All right, hello and welcome to the Stoner Story Witch. I am very excited. I'm very excited today because we are doing something new. First time ever on the podcast. We are talking about a story that I have not personally consumed. And it is Squid Games, season 1 and season 2. I remember when season 1 came out, I had students that were watching it, and just the way they talked about it, and just like, I knew enough about this show to know that like my little nervous system would just probably not be good for it. And I think I was probably right. But Kevin is here with me, and you have just watched both seasons. And I could just tell from just being around you that it was, if nothing else, an entertaining show, a very thought-provoking show. And I just invited like the question of like, could we talk about this show without me necessarily seeing it? A big part of, I think, the purpose of this podcast is to have actually like have really deep conversations about the stories that are mattering to us in different seasons of our lives. And I could just tell that this was a story that seemed to matter to you. And so I'm here to kind of learn a little bit about this story, apply some of maybe the stoner story witch lens, and just have a chat with you as you wait for season 3 to come out. Anyway, welcome, Kevin, to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and bravo, Squid Game. It really wrapped me up. It got me. It gripped me. And I had not watched season 1 beforehand. And so then I saw season 2 came out, and I was like, I haven't watched anything in a hot minute, and let's give it a go. And I got completely sucked in.
Yeah.
And once you get past the graphic nature of the show, there are a lot of rich, dense themes that touch on our humanity.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that I found myself thinking about as I was watching the show was just, what would I do in this situation? Because the premise of the show is that there's a bunch of ordinary, everyday people that get thrown into this game. And because of that, I think it's relatable, because any one of us could be a random person that gets thrown into this game. And where you're quite literally fighting for your life. And so that was what was really thought-provoking for me. I did something in preparation for this podcast that I've never done before, which is create my own synopsis of the show.
Ooh.
So I thought perhaps we could start there, since you haven't seen the show before.
Yes. And for listeners, inviting anybody who, who hasn't watched and, like me, maybe doesn't want to watch but wants to like kind of be a part of the conversation, they can be a part of it. And then also, if you're planning on watching it, maybe stop listening and do that, and then you can come back. So yeah, lay it on me.
Yeah, and this will be quick, but because I know there's lots of season recap type videos and content out there, but just to set a level field for anyone that hasn't watched the show. In season 1, there's the protagonist Gi-yoon, and he's a cheapskate who lives with his mom. And he bets on horses, and he owes money to loan sharks. And he's kind of a bum. And he gets recruited for this game in a subway station to have a chance at winning 45.6 billion won, which is like $31 million.
Okay.
And 455 other people who are in large amounts of debt have been recruited to the same game. And they have to compete in 6 rounds of games, or they are eliminated, which in the beginning of the show, they say, or you will be eliminated. And it's like, oh, okay, then they get to go home. But we learn that no, being eliminated means you die. And we learn that super rich and bored billionaires are watching and betting on these games as if like the humans are horses. And we learn this from another important character in season 1. He's the old guy in the games who appeared to be an ordinary game player, becomes friends with Gi-yoon, the protagonist in the game. They like kind of form a little alliance, and later reveals to Gi-yoon after the game is over, on his deathbed in this like apartment loft, that he was actually the host of the games. This old guy was originally kind of the orchestrator of the games, but then in it.
But he didn't die in the game.
It looked like he lost. He lost a game where you had to pick a partner, and he picked Guillaume, and they picked each other, and Guillaume beat him, but they didn't actually show him get shot. The camera pans away, and so it looks like he died, but they somehow must have gotten him out.
Sure. Okay. Gotcha.
And so
because even when billionaires want to play this game, they don't actually have to play by like the same rules as everyone else, right? Yeah. Okay. Just.
But Ilnam does meet his fate, and he does die. After the show, he has this or after the game's over, he has this confrontation with Guillaume. And then we see him because he had a brain tumor and he was kind of on his way out anyway.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay.
So as I mentioned, Guillaume does win the game. 155 people die. He wins the game. He wins it in this epic showdown of playing a game called Squid Game, which was like an old South Korean like game that kids would play in a playground. And he beats his real world friend, Sang-woo. He was a cunning player and leader throughout the game, but ends up dying. Actually, Guillaume spares his life, even though he could have killed him, and then Sang-woo kills himself in this super tragic.
I feel that in my chest.
Yeah,
Aww.
It was.
Because he wants Guillaume to win, presumably.
I mean, there's a whole. We could talk a lot about why he would have done that. It's kind of a mystery. It's like it's.
Oh, okay. Maybe
it's
we
up
still
to
don't
interpretation.
Know.
Okay. So Guillaume gets the prize money. It gets deposited into a bank account. He has 45 billion won. But for a whole year, he's basically stuck in shock because when he got back from the game, his mom, who was sick, was dead in their apartment. And he was going to use the money to like pay her hospital bills, but then it was too late. And so that is like tragic. And so he's just in a total funk, and it's like he's still poor. Meanwhile, there's this whole other storyline with this detective who's named Junho, and he's like kind of going rogue, and he's looking for his older brother who's lost. And there's clues that end up leading the detective to Gi-hoon and the games. And so the detective, Junho, sneaks away to the island where the games are taking place. He disguises himself as a staff member of the games. He gets a unit. He kills one guard and then like becomes the guard, and they all wear masks so they don't know that that he's not the thing. And then he discovers these archive files from the years past, which show that his brother was in previous versions of the game from archive files from like years ago.
Oh, so these games have been going on for a while.
These games have been going on.
Oh, I see.
And eventually he gets evidence about like all the game's atrocities. He takes pictures on his phone that has like the longest battery life of any phone ever.
They always do.
And he tries to send cell signals very weak on this island. But he goes to the top. The staff have now found out that he's there, and so they're chasing him down. There's a chase. He goes to the top of the mountain, and there's a confrontation with the front man. And the front man is the man in the black mask who's kind of the one running the games. He's like the one in charge of the games and like saying the next game will begin.
Okay.
He confronts this guy who takes off his mask and reveals that he is the long lost brother. So the detective has found his brother, and he discovers that his brother is the villain. He's not trapped there, like trapped in these games. He's the one running the games.
He's like the architect of the whole thing. Yeah. Okay.
And they end up shooting each other in the shoulder. And Junho, the detective, falls off the cliff, but we don't see whether he lives or dies.
And this is all in season 1.
So getting to the end of season 1, after the year of wallowing, Gi-hoon, the protagonist, finally he's ready to go see his daughter in America. He had like lost custody of her, and but now he has his act together, and he has his haircut and is like wearing a business suit. But he's like on the way to the airport, and he's going to the subway, and he sees the recruiter guy that had recruited him to the game a year ago. And he gets the little business card that has the phone number from the guy that was trying to get recruited. And he calls the number, and he speaks to the masked man. And he's like, these games need to stop. Like, they need to be ended forever. And the front man tells him, just get on the plane. You need to get on the plane, Gyun.
Yeah.
But he walks back up the jetway, and he doesn't go see his kid, and he starts his path of vengeance. And that's how season 1 ends.
Yeah, okay. Still not being the dad that he wants to be to his kid, because he's now like wanting retribution and get even with the architects of the games.
Yeah. So
okay.
So that kind of like, so Gi-hoon, like, he has this, he's a super fun protagonist to cheer for, because there's like a rags to riches kind of thing.
Totally.
But he has this moral compass, this internal, unwavering sense of what's right and wrong and what's ethically correct. And that overrides a lot of other things that someone could think, beliefs or values that someone could have. But he just believes in his core so strongly that these games need to end, like whatever it takes.
Because he's seen so many people die.
And the humanity of it was not lost on him. Like, it was kind of lost on Sang-woo, like, which we can talk about. Like, you know, everybody in the game ends up having to like literally kind of kill someone else, like somehow.
Sure.
Sometimes the games end up killing people, but once you get to the later rounds, it's like
kill or be killed kind of thing.
Yeah. But Gi-hoon
never killed anyone.
Never like
directly killed.
I think that's true. So he has this really strong moral compass.
But in the end, Sang-woo killed himself because he knew Gi-hoon wouldn't. I'm totally guessing. I've obviously never seen, but like I almost feel like, because you said that the humanity was lost on Sang-woo, and I felt myself be like, but wait a second, like I don't know. I feel like it's a very profound demonstration to kill oneself in a situation like you described. That, you know, that maybe Sang-woo and Gi-hoon share something in common, like a certain level of selflessness, that like maybe Gi-hoon would never kill someone else for someone, or like to save himself. And that's his humanity. But then for Sang-woo to like know that Gi-hoon would not kill him. I mean, I don't know, but I'm really compelled. I mean, so if we just take a pause after season 1, I just think it's really interesting that, we have like 2 stories of, and you said that Sang-woo and Gi-hoon were like childhood friends, but then they kind of,
they were from the same town, and Sang-woo ends up going to business school and is quote unquote successful.
Sure. And then, but Gi-hoon is used, like quote unquote, like a bum, like living with his mom. And it's interesting because hearing that, I'm almost like, oh, what about like Gi-hoon's worldview makes him like not be able to prosper in like business school and like be super successful within capitalist paradigms or whatever, like that maybe. But then also Sang-woo eventually ends up in debt one way or the other. And then we have those 2 brothers that. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that there's some interesting. I'm getting Hadestown vibes just from there being like a parallel. Like Hadestown is like following like 2 couples, like romantic couples, and kind of their journey. And in this way, it's like, oh wow, like we have 2 like relationships between childhood friends, and then these brothers. I think I'm putting a pin in it because I don't. So like that's immediately what comes to mind. And otherwise, it just seems like just a very rich metaphor for capitalism. There's a particular scene, the scene that you showed me, and we'll link to the show notes, because I was like, I will watch one scene that we can kind of, because I feel like sometimes it's helpful.
And the scene I showed you was from towards the end of season 1.
Right, season 1.
We can go there now. Let's go there now. So they there's 6 games. The 5th game has just ended, where the characters have to jump across these glass panes on this bridge, and they have a choice every jump to go from one of 2 glass panes, and one of them will break and the other one will not break because it's tempered glass. And so they get to the end, and there's 4 people left, and the guy in front knows, he's worked with glass his whole life, so he's able to tell which one will break and which one won't. But then the billionaires and the front man notice that this guy seems to have like an inside intel.
Sure.
So they turn the lights off, so the guy can't see, and the time's running out. So Sang-woo jumps onto his pane because the tempered glass can hold the weight of 2 people. So they're standing on the second to last one, and he pushes the guy who was able to see which ones were fake. He pushes him onto one of the 2 in front of them, and it breaks. And so the 3 remaining survivors are able to jump across and finish the game before the whole bridge before the whole bridge explodes and the time runs out. So what I had you watch was the scene immediately after that,
right,
where the game's over, they come back into the room, and Gi-eun says to Sang-woo, it's just the 2 of them having this debate, and he's like, why would you go up and push that guy? And Sang-woo's like, you got lucky choosing the back of the line. It made it easy for you, didn't it? What if that guy wasted our time on the tile like the one before him? Would you have done nothing? And then Gi-hoon's like, but he was on the last tile. He would have moved to the next one soon. No, you don't know that. That last guy could tell the tempered glass the whole time, but he just watched all those people fall through and die. Which is true. Like, the whole game, that guy could have been like, hey, everyone, like, I know how to do this. But he just let the first 12 people fall to their doom.
He was guilty too. Like, he's not, like, he wasn't some innocent person. And
then Gi-hoon's like, the only reason you and I even made it is because that guy could tell them apart. And Sang-woo's like, that's bullshit. I don't know about you, but I am not still alive because of that guy. I'm alive because I worked hard to make sure I stayed alive in this place. And then Gi-hoon's like, stop with the excuses. I'm not buying it. You still killed someone. His blood is on your hands. And Sang-woo's like, no, you're delusional. We have to kill everyone else anyway to leave here with all of that money. You should be thanking me that you don't have the blood on your hands. And then Gi-hoon's like, what if it was me on that tile? And Sang-woo just gets defensive and doesn't answer the question because it's super uncomfortable to think about that situation. So, yeah, I know why I love that exchange, but that's the scene I had you watch. And
yeah,
what does it bring up for you?
What it brings up for me is, like, it's like they're both right. So we have Sang-woo is kind of like the voice of like, but we live in capitalism and it's a dog eat dog world, kill or be killed. Like, we gotta, like, we just like accept that this is the way it has to be, as opposed to something that like we could change or we would have like some sort of power to resist. His like wanting to use like other people's, like lack of innocence to prove that they don't deserve compassion or mercy. Like, I think that that's like a pretty familiar thing. It's like, oh, well, like, look at that climate activist who like gets on an airplane, or look at, and it's just like, oh my God, like in late stage capitalism, like there is no perfection. It's a myth. There is no purity. There's no such thing as innocence. And so it's like, we just need to, like, the whole idea that anybody is pure. And it seems like Sang-woo is really oriented to that, because he's like, this has to and maybe he learned that in business school, right? Like, this is the way it has to be. You're delusional. You don't understand. This is how it works. And the whole, like, be glad that I did it, so like you don't have to, like that just like, like makes me think, like when people are like, again, it's like that like Sang-woo is right, that Gi-yoon like the reason Giyun won the game, or one of the many reasons, is because so many other people were willing to kill. And so it's like he can like pretend that like he was innocent, but it was like he still benefited from these systems, right? And I think the whole benefiting from those systems too, when he said, when Sang-woo said that I worked hard, like I forget what the line right before that was, but that makes me think of like, you know, a lot of wealthy people would be like, I don't need anyone else, right? Like I'm a self-made man, like Elon Musk and whatever the fuck, like fucking billionaires. I'm sorry, I like every person is a unique snowflake and deserves love, but like I just do not believe that billionaires should exist. That people should have access to like that extreme amount of wealth is what I mean. And because there is this like I don't need anyone else, but it's like no, like you do need roads, you do need like a lot of your wealth is built on the fact that there's like other infrastructure or other people, or that there's people's labor that you could exploit to get you rich or whatever. And so it's just like I think that's a very common thing that a lot of people will use also, like with any level of privilege in marginalized systems, is like, I don't have white privilege because I worked hard. It's like, yes, you did work hard. And also there is like this larger system that meant that you didn't have this extra struggle. And so I think like Giyun is speaking to this, like, so if we have like capitalism and the way the world is demonstrated and personified by Sang-woo, we then have Giyun, who's like wanting to be that voice of like, but let's create a new world now. Like, but I don't want to live in that world. I don't consent to participate to those rules. And then that makes me think again of Hadestown. Always, because when Orpheus at the end of one of the songs, he's offering a toast and he says, "Let the world we dream about be the one we live in now." And it's like, okay, like Sang-woo is like speaking about this world that we live in now, and then Giyun is like, but I dream of like a world where we don't, like, no, I don't want to live in that world.
And I refuse to play by its rules.
And I refuse to play by those rules. Yeah. And then absolutely it makes sense to me. Like when you first told me that he like takes a whole year, I was just like, oh my gosh, he doesn't see his daughter for a whole year. And then I was just like, oh my God, though, like the trauma of just surviving that and mourning his mom and all that happened. And just like, what does this, you know, like he obviously would still be feeling guilt that all those people had to, you can't like actually enjoy that money because you totally, he can see, like, he can see all the injustice and exploitation that went into that money being there. And so it's like, it's not even about like, and yet he's so oriented to like this world that he wants. And what I think is really interesting is like, you know, just hearing you talk about him, like he starts off seeming like he's lacking the secure attachment with himself to know like what matters to him in his life. Like
definitely
he doesn't like the big goal of secure attachment is like being connected to your values, something larger than yourself. What is it you're reaching towards? What is it you're trying to create? And like he just like doesn't really, you know, maybe it's fear, maybe it's because he doesn't know how to like survive in capitalism because there's no good choices, you know, only trade-offs. But then at the end, he's just like so clear that like this is wrong. And the only other thing that could possibly like compare to be like a thing that he would reach towards is like to like be this dad. Like, I think there's also this push pull between like, you know, like every time I decide I want to work on the podcast rather than like play with my kids, I'm kind of like, wow, I want to be able to make these micro moments of like being a parent and like doing things that like matter in like these tiny moments. But then there's also this like kind of larger impulse to like do something that feels meaningful on a slightly larger scale. And I think there's a push pull between that too. And so the fact that everything in this show seems so black and white, like it's either this or this, like it's good or bad, like innocent or guilty, or like
the glass will break or it won't.
Yeah. And And so I think, the fact that he like, he can't do both. He's not in a position where he like can be a dad and do this, but it's ultimately like, I don't want my kid to like live in a world where, I mean, maybe he doesn't say this, but it's like, this is not the world that I want. And like, I will now like, I will now like do whatever I can to make sure this doesn't happen. And I guess you can respond. And I know we still have season 2 to discuss.
Well, when you brought up the black and white, how everything in the show is black and white, that is a perfect segue into season 2, because there's also this huge element in the whole show, both seasons, about free will.
Oh, yeah. And consent.
Yeah. Because the players all choose to be there. They get the business card, they opt in, they call the number and say, I want to play.
Right.
Now, when they do that, they don't realize that it's a life or death. But after the first game, now granted about half of them died in that first game, but after that, the consent clause the consent form that they all signed at the beginning has clauses. And I might mess this up, but the first one is nobody can quit the game. And then there's a second one that I can't remember. And then the third one says, if the majority of the players agree to stop the games, then the games will stop.
And that wasn't in season 1.
That was in season 1.
It was in season 1.
It gets altered in season 2, but in season 1, that was still there. And they do all vote in season 1, and they vote to shut it down. Once they remember that they can do that, and they vote to shut it down because enough people in the room think, hey, we should not do this, where all these people just died in this game of red light, green light. Like, didn't see that coming. And they all leave and they go back to their lives. And then, but the game orchestrators say, we're going to give you another chance to come back. And my memory isn't super clear, but I think all of them come back, or almost all. I think there's like, out of like a couple hundred, maybe like 5 or 10 don't come back, but the rest do, because so many of them are in so much debt that their lives in the real world are a struggle. There are people coming to them threatening to cut off their fingers, or the police is they have all these warrants out for their arrest and stuff. And
That's a really great comparison, that like, because it's like, we think that like this is like a metaphor for like capitalism, where it's like, oh, like, kill or be killed. But then it's like, oh, we're actually going to give you the choice to go back into the real world. And it's like, oh, this is actually, I will take my chances here rather than like going back to the like. I
would rather either die now or be able to get out of this hell that is my real life. But then there's a lot of that's like, okay, how bad is it really? Like, how bad do you have it really? Yeah. And so the black and white thread of the voting thing becomes more of a thing in season 2.
Okay.
Because they alter the clause on the to say that if the majority of players agree, the game will be shut down, and the current prize pool will be evenly distributed amongst all players.
Oh, and that was new in season 2.
That was new.
Okay.
So that was a new wrinkle that before it was just like, no, you guys can shut the game down, but no one's getting any money.
Yeah, and like everybody getting $10 million, like the final 3 people getting $10 million, you might make that choice as opposed to like, oh, I have to kill, like I either die or I get 30 million, you know,
right,
like
exactly. Yeah.
Dollars.
So I believe one of the episodes in season 2 is titled X's and O's, because in the show they now vote in season 2, they vote in between every single game, and you either vote yes or no, and if you vote no, I want the games to end, then you get an X badge that gets velcroed to your uniform, and if you vote yes, I want the game to continue, then you get an O badge that's stuck to your uniform, and then everybody can see which are you an us or are you a them? Are you and
wow. God. Oh my God. This is also so Severance-y. I just having a stretch. Oh my God. So it's like there's this consent, but then it becomes like absolutely
divisive.
Yeah, divisive and potentially threatening your safety here. Oh my God.
That it adds this wrinkle in season 2 that creates this very, polarizing, where you can just see the people that want to stay. That brings up this. We started down here because of the free will piece, which is the people that run the game say throughout the whole season, throughout the whole series, that the free will of the players is a key element of this. Like, no one should be forced to be doing this, which makes sense from if you think from the villain's point of view of like they're trying to run this game for billionaires to like have like some exciting thing to bet on. Like, if people were forced to be there, then if anyone ever escaped, or even the winners or whatever, they would go straight to the cops and they would get the whole FBI and everything to. But because they're choosing to be there, they're like, they've opted in. So they support what's going, especially after they've seen the fact that people die. And so, yeah, it just adds.
Right. It's like this free will isn't actually because the billionaires like feel compassion. It's like they're saving their ass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, so I think like that's just like an important distinction, that it's like that they are ensuring the futurity of the Squid Games, not actually being like, oh, like we fucked up. Sorry. And this does make me think of Love Island in like, again, and Severance. It's like, we have like this like high demand group, right? Like the Squid Games is this high demand group. There's now an in group and an out group, and like there are like people at the top and or whatever. And I think that when like in terms of Love Island, like people like can consent to go on that show, but they maybe don't fully understand what they're signing up for until they leave, and then they see like what the social scorn of the whole situation is, and like people have taken their lives after being on Love Island. And now Love Island is like, oh, we offer a lot of mental health throughout the season and even after. And it's like, oh, like they're not doing that. Like they're not offering that mental health because they actually care about the wellness of the contestants. They just want Love Island to continue. So like, let's not think that there's actually like
humanitarian motivations
it's
here.
like they want to keep the cash cow healthy. So
yeah, and there's a real juicy thread in there too that I'm going to plant the seed for right now about how much is enough.
Oh yeah.
Which resonates a lot with my own life and with some others in my peer group that wrestle with that question a lot. But I'm going to put a pin in that, and I'm not going to forget.
We'll circle back,
because we've started talking about season 2, and so for anyone that hasn't watched, I do want to give a quick rundown.
Oh yes, please.
Of what happens in season 2. So it's now 3 years after Gi-hoon was in the games.
3 years.
So multiple years have gone by since we see him not get on the plane and swear his vengeance to the front man on the phone. And then 2 more years have gone by. And that's where we start season 2. And we see that he's been busy. He has been plotting. Gi-hoon has been in the real world, starting to use some of his money, and he's been plotting. So he hires a team of crooks to try to track down the game recruiter in the subway station. He's mapped it all out, and he's like, I want to have this army of soldiers that's going to comb through the subway station during this time of year, which is when I got recruited 3 years ago, and we're going to find this guy, and he's going to be our like way into the games. And so there's this whole thing, but they do eventually find the recruiter guy, who turns out to be a psycho. This guy, there's this really, I'm not even going to get into it because it's not central to the themes of the show, but he turns out to be,
he's a shady character.
He is like unhinged.
Okay.
And they track him down, but then so there's two. There were these crooks are working in pairs. One pair who's actually the mob boss that like Gi-hun has hired, and his number 2 guy. They're the pair that finds the recruiter. So there's this foot race, but the recruiter guy is a skilled like fighter, and so he actually knocks them both out and brings them to this creepy room where they basically play this like Russian roulette type game, and the mob boss dies, but his number 2 guy lives. And then meanwhile Gi-hun's trying to like catch up to them, and he does catch up, and then he has a showdown with the psycho recruiter guy where they play Russian roulette, and Gi-hun basically manipulates the guy into shooting himself. It gets down to the last bullet, and like they're playing this game of Russian roulette. The other one's completely unarmed, so at any point, either one of them could just take the gun and shoot the other person. This was originally in the games, or he was recruited to be a staff member and kind of like worked his way up through the game. And basically he has this like obsession with winning.
Well, because he must have won if he was a survivor of a previous game.
I think he was a staff member.
Oh, interesting. Well, yeah, that would definitely mess you up if you were a staff member watching.
And then he kind of like worked up to be like the top staff member, and then they gave him this role as like the fact that he would go so far. I wish I kind of had the dialogue between the two of them in that scene, but basically there's this obsession with winning. The dopamine hit that you get from like having a competition and winning, which we saw in season 1 with the old guy Ilnam, who was the orchestrator of the games, but he just wanted to be in the game to like feel alive.
Totally.
And so anyway, so that's kind of an interesting piece. Gi-hun has effectively killed, even though the guy killed himself, the recruiter guy, and now he has a new business card number to like call, or somehow he gets into a limo. He gets into a limo that maybe it was the recruiter's limo, or they somehow like pick him up, and he gets in a limo where he's talking to the front man, the man in the black mask, but through a speaker.
Okay.
And they have a debate about the existence of the games, and Gi-hun's like, I'm going to shut you down, and the front man's saying stuff like, but everyone does it on their own free will, and like, and we're cleansing like the scum of the earth by like all these people are trash. They use that's what's the word they in the translation from Korean to English, they use the word trash. But we're giving them a chance. We're giving them a chance to like turn their lives around, and so they have this debate. Gi-hun sees it as just like people, but the front man is like justifies it because they signed the consent form. And
yeah, this also just feels very Severance-y, so I'm just gonna like, because the whole like talking like you can never actually talk to the people in charge, like it's always this like you can only talk to the board, like we never actually hear in Severance, we never like hear the board, it's always like through some headset of somebody else. And so in this case it's like he can only talk through this like technology mediated, so that just feels also like you were saying, like with the X's and O's and like the consent, that makes me think in Severance they're always like, every time you come back it's because you chose to be here, right?
Your outie
your outie chose for your innie to come to work today, so that's why you're here. Like you're out, like you wouldn't be here if your outie didn't choose to be here, so obviously you want to be here. And so it's like, well, and the whole, everybody signed these waivers, and also like the whole like big consent thing that they do in Severance, but it's like, but there actually isn't a good way out. Like you're either then going to get that social scorn, or what you're going back out into is actually just like not that much better, right. And like, oh, that's like,
yeah, it's like you're trapped without actually being trapped, but you're still trapped.
Yeah, and I mean, and it definitely makes me think of, it does make me think of people who like who do gamble or like do lottery, like, or just like the wild things that people do in order to get rich or popular or famous or whatever. And yeah.
So Gi-hun in this limo, then he says, put me back in the game.
Okay.
And so they do the gas thing where they like pass out and then like they wake up in the game. So Gi-hun gets back in the game. We already talked about how the games are changed a bit with the new clause.
You vote at the end.
You vote
no matter what.
And then you get a badge so it's visible of how you voted, and if you do end the games, then the prize pool is split.
Mm-hmm.
The whole like how much is enough and one more game, quote unquote, one more game becomes theme in this season because the people in there are in different amounts of debt. And so for some people, 100 million won is enough for them to pay off their debts and live. But for some others, they're in, $1 billion of debt. And so if they got the 100 million, it's like, I'm just going to the loan sharks are still going to cut off my pinky.
Right.
And so there's this like literal how much debt is each person in, like how much is enough for them to get out of debt. There is a number, it is quantifiable.
Right.
But then there's also this intangible, how much is enough for me to just feel like I don't want to put my life on the line anymore in this way. And then there's this super clear, like slot machine-y gambling addiction type thing that some of the characters who are voting yes continue the games, they just have this like insidious, well, we'll just play one more. We'll just play one more game and then we'll go. And then they win, they survive that game, and then they still feel that way. And then they just want to say one more, and they say one more game again. It's like a kid who just wants one more piggyback ride until it's over. And then the dopamine stops running, and then they want another, just one more. And
yeah, to actually have like the discipline to hold yourself to that.
So it's so infuriating to see that the people that get wrapped up in the one more game when it's not in their own best interest, but they just want to ring the slot machine again.
Well, right, because that's a thrill. Yeah. What it makes me think of is because you and I have been to casinos before. I've never like played. I my nervous system like can't handle like the actual like even blackjack's like too fast and too much. But like I like watching you play, and you're pretty good at it. And like I know like we've talked about the importance of like what are you willing to win and what are you willing to lose. And so it's like I'm willing to walk away once I lose the $20 I walked in here with, or once I've won 80 or whatever. And I remember there was one time like we walked in and like 10 minutes go by and you're up $80. And then you're like, all right, time to cash out. Like we were on vacation. So like there were other things we weren't like at, like it's just like a blackjack room in this like hotel or whatever. And I remember being like, oh, but like I'm still having my drink. Like I'm still like, but like I hardly even. I'm only. And then you were like, Kristen, like
you taught me
I
have to know what I'm willing to win.
And so, and even I got sucked into like, oh, but I enjoy what? But it was like, no, like we have to practice the thing. Like if we don't practice it here, like this is the whole point. And, and I don't know if we went back like another day, but.
And isn't that so wild to have this feeling of disappointment
that you won,
that we won?
Yeah, we were up $80 or whatever, and it was just like, oh, but like I was, but 100%, like it's that same thing, and I mean, and of course the whole question of. And it's like this. I think it breaks capitalism at its core if everybody just was like, but like when will it be enough? And that's a question that I remember. I think Toy Smith was on Carmen's podcast back in the day, and I remember like they were talking about that, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like yeah, like when will I know if it's enough? And like if you know what your enough number is, then like. You need to get that number. But like, if you're like, oh, your enough number is hypothetical, then like you are probably like privileged enough within capitalist system, if it's like, oh, but I just need more, it's like people who know what their enough number is, it's because like they have to budget, they know what their rent is, they know what their monthly food bill is, they know that they like want to be like saving, you know, whatever for like emergency, their car payments or whatever those things are. It's like, if you have a tangible enough number, then like, you know, like then that's it. But then, sorry, what is it that I'm trying to say? That if your enough number is like an actual tangible thing that you can say, then like that says something about like that you are working class, that you like that, like you do have like, you know, a risk of having needs that are unmet. But like, and I know we've been in this other category where it's just like this hypothetical, like, oh, like I guess I just like don't know what enough is. And it's like, oh, that's when it's like, maybe we just like take a step back and reassess, like how is my nervous system being hijacked in the service of these like capitalist systems that I maybe don't want to partake in. At least that's my experience. And I know you're still doing your synopsis, but you mentioned before we ever pressed record that there was this really interesting, and it wasn't a scene that I saw, but you did, the way you described it, it's as if I watched it, with a pregnant woman and her baby daddy who are also in the game. Is that season 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we take a moment and talk about that?
Yeah. There's a few side stories too that I just didn't want to spend too much time on, because there's, you know, there are other side characters that they get, you know, we get involved with and either cheer for or hate, love to hate. So yeah.
Or I can just share what I want to say about them.
Yeah. So there's a pregnant gal, Junhee, and another player in the game who was a crypto guy who had a YouTube channel about crypto, and people spent a lot of money with him, and then his crypto thing imploded. And so he got broke, and a bunch of his other followers got broke. One of the other players in the game got broke because of this crypto YouTube guy.
Oh, geez. Okay.
And so he's like, I'm going to kill you, you know?
Yeah.
So he's got to watch out for this crazy purple-haired amateur rapper guy who got in debt because of him.
Yep.
But he also, crypto guy, got Junhee pregnant, but then like abandoned her, or was like, or
once he got broke.
He said one of their first interactions in the season, he was like, well, you didn't get the abortion?
Ooh.
Like, I think it implied that like they had talked about it, and she said she was going to, but then she didn't. And so it comes about that they both keep surviving in the game, and he's trying to like do the right thing. You know, he's, now that like, you know, it's life or death, he sees that, hey, that's my kid in there, and like I'm gonna try, like he sort of makes a plea with her, like, I want to start fresh, like I want to be involved, I want to be there for you, like receive my help, please, you know, and they're kind of having this back and forth, and then he says, like, it's not like that. I just want us to have enough so that the three of us can live a life more. She's like, enough? And exactly how much is that? Pay off your debts with your own damn money, because I'm going to use mine to raise our child. Because at this point they had already won a few games. So like if they quit, they would receive like a decent amount. And
like she wants to leave. She wants to take her money and raise her baby.
Right.
And
he's like, I just need a little bit more.
He wants one more game still. Yeah. So he's like an X and she's an O, or other way around.
But
so like they're at a disagreement.
And I when she said that, like, and exactly how much is that? Pay off your debts with your own damn money, because I'm going to use mine to raise our child. I got chills. Like I got goosebumps when she said that. And I think it's because of just the exactly how much is that? How much is enough for you? Is a question I've thought about a lot in my own life.
Right.
And so it just zapped that like very real, very difficult question to answer.
Right.
For me, my experience is that is extremely challenging it's not hard to look at your your main like bank accounts that you spend your money out of and look at the last 12 months and just add up everything that's left your bank account and divide it by 12, and that's how much money you spend every month on average.
Right.
As that's not hard to figure out. But how much money is enough to feel safe? How much is enough to feel good about my kid's future?
Right. But when you live in capitalism, you can't feel safe. You can't feel good about the future, So it's like let's just keep participating in these games of extraction and exploitation to try to make us feel safe. But it's like this never-ending hamster wheel. And I think that's what I think is really fascinating about these two. Okay, and I'm seeing some other dynamics. Is it? I mean, like they say, like money and raising kids are like the two things that will like drive couples apart, right? Like money issues and how you raise your kids. And so, I mean, and he left her, it sounds like not even because it was a disagreement, like he left her just anyway, thinking she was going to get an abortion, and maybe he finds his humanity. Again, it's like this severance. There's this outside version of them, and then they're like in this game, and, maybe, like maybe they reconnect to like some part of humanity or that they find, or some other purpose. I don't know, but him saying like, I just need more. And she's like, I just want to raise this kid. Like what you say you want what I want, but the how you're going to do it is different. And I think maybe that's not making sense, the look on your face.
No, it is.
Okay. And then what also comes to mind is Gi-yoon, because essentially this is playing out of Gi-yoon's situation. Gi-yoon has a baby mama in the States raising his daughter with her own money. I'll take mine to raise our kid. Let's just take a beat for all the single moms out there, that are dealing with like raising men's kids on their time and with their resources, with their money. So like the question could be with Gi-yoon, like, Gi-yoon isn't looking for the enough for him is what? Like the total dismantling of capitalism, because like that's not going to happen. And so then it's just like, so yeah, like this, I don't know. I think there's like this.
His enough is the total dismantling of this game.
But I wonder if he succeeds, is that enough when there's still, or
I mean, that's a very interesting question to ponder for the end of the show. Like, will he feel satisfied? If he does succeed in dismantling the games, will he land that feeling of like, I've done it and now I can just enjoy my life? And
maybe not every person is meant to be a parent. Maybe not every person wants to raise kids, right? And like, that's totally fine. Maybe Gi-yoon, that was just like never something he actually wanted and just something he thought he wanted. But it's just like, I feel really sad if there is actually a shred of him that really did want to like be a present parent and go back to the States and be with his daughter. It's like, it is sad to me that he is choosing, like, even though it's a super noble thing to be like, I'm going to shut down this game and this isn't okay. I also just really feel for his daughter. I feel for him. I feel for like, the fact that like again, it's black and white, you can't do both. You have to like, you can do either this or this. You can either be content and we can raise our kid together, or you can like try to like buy back your crypto business or grow your crypto business or whatever. But it's like, it's so hard to do both.
I would say the last piece that I have for a synopsis of season 2 is the other thread, which is the detective and the front man. So at the end of season 1, they shot each other in the shoulder.
Oh, yes.
The detective falls off the cliff. We see in season 2 that he's not dead.
Okay.
He got picked up by a boat. He has a whole struggle with his chief, and like he's like basically struggling to keep his job or not. He ends up finding Gi-yoon outside of the game, like this is before in the early part of season 2, and essentially they team up. So Gi-yoon's like, you need to quit being a cop if you really want to try and join me. Like, stop being a cop. And so the detective guy is basically one part of the team of crook soldiers that is gonna try to first track down, but then also take 2 boats and try to find this island, because like it's an island that exists somewhere. There's a giant warehouse where these people are being kept. Like, let's find it. So they take a boat out. They have a drone where they're like flying over to try and scope something out. They find a trap door. They're like, this must be it. They go to open the trap door. The trap door explodes. It's like booby trapped. Some of the crook soldier guys die from that. And then like, okay, wait, do they know that we're coming? Like, what's so the whole time the season's going on, we have the detective and the boat captain and the team of crooks that are trying to find the island and like find the games from the. And the front man, the man in the black mask, because we saw his face at the end of season 1 when he's on the top of the hill, so we know what he looks like. And we see that in season 2, he is in the game now as a player. He's wearing the player number 1, which Ilnam from season 1, the old guy that was the host.
Right, I was like, this is kind of done before.
He was player number 1, right. But the only person nobody knows that he's a plant. He is just playing the game as if he's a normal guy.
Just like Ilnam.
And he tells this whole sob story. He basically like buddies up with Gi-yoon, and Gi-yoon sees him as a very competent player, like the punk purple hair guy that like he's very unlikable. He and his like sidekick are picking on the crypto guy. There's a scene where they're like picking on him in the prison room, and they're just like starting to punch him and beat him up and stuff. And the front man, number 1, but he's just a normal player, he's the one that goes and like breaks up the fight and like very beats up both of the bully guys. He just like boom, 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 and they're both down in like 2 seconds.
Wow.
So you can tell like this guy hand-to-hand combat, like he knows what he's doing. Very confident. But when he's talking to Gi-yoon and like the little alliance group that Gi-yoon's starting to build, he's also very like warm. He has a story about, I think it was like someone in his family, his wife or something, had like very expensive medical bills, and he has like his whole reason of why he needs to get the money. And now I'm just remembering. Thank you, anyone that's listening, for joining me on my adventure of connecting the dots of Squid Game in real time. Because in season 1, his brother, the detective, there's a scene where the detective is with their mom in her apartment, and they're looking at a family photo, and also the detective goes to a cemetery where his sister-in-law, the front is dead. And so we see he's kind of like doing the duty of his brother by like going to visit the grave. And so then when frontman guy in season 2 is in the game and he's telling these people about his sick wife, it maybe was a true story like 3 years ago or 4 years ago or whatever. But I don't think it's true now. But the point is he seems very likable, but also someone to be feared in the game. And he's in the game, and he and Gi-hoon, I mean, he knows that Gi-hoon is like, he knows who Gi-hoon intimately is. But Gi-hoon he just thinks he's another guy that can help him basically survive to the later rounds of the game.
And I think of that as like weaponized kind eyes, contact nutrition, right? Like that, he's got like this warm affect. You said that like he's trying to, he knows Gi-yoon will help him.
Yes.
I'm also thinking a little bit, I hope I can make a little connection to Devil's Plan. If anybody, it's another Korean show about games, not playground games like Squid Games, but it's a reality. I fucking loved the Devil's Plan. I think there's going to be another season. But I remember in season 1 of Devil's Plan, it came down to 2 characters, and it sounded like it was almost pretty similar to like season 1. Was it Sukjin? Was that the Sukjin was almost kind of like Seun, where it's just like only one of us can win the game. But then there's this other guy who is like Orbit, and Orbit came in being like, there's a way that we can collectively win this. And he was really trying at any possible, like they like win these tokens. Like you can watch Devil's Plan, listeners, if you want to, but there's this whole idea of like, if I can help the underdogs, then like we can all, like more people can win. And he didn't realize that like, no, they're going to whittle these games down one way or the other. They're going to make it impossible for you to actually save people. And like, I don't think he got that right away. And then there were these other players who were like, well, we can form an alliance, but we also still know that at the end of the, like we're anyway. So early on, there were some really, really good players that got eliminated because of these alliances. And, but I really liked it. I think it does beg the question of like how far your alliances can take you when there are like rules written that say like that you can only advance by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, it's like you still have to like the hyper individualism. I think that also is a Hades Town connection, because like Orpheus has to like leave the underworld by himself. He has to leave by, everybody can follow him, but if he turns and looks back. And so it's this whole idea of like, you have to be alone. You have to do it on your own. And it's like, that is such a huge task, a huge burden. Yeah. When we are social creatures, when like we have like biological attachment needs. And then, you read the fine print and, everything has to be.
Well, and whether it's in Devil's Plan, which is like a reality game show, or in a fictional story like Squid Game, that's also this whole, there's like very bare minimal rules. And so the players of the game have a lot of leeway to figure out what alliances they are or aren't going to do. And you just sort of see this like collective psychology. And there's like a lot of, bell curves of like the people, there's like outliers, and then there's a lot of people that try and do the safety numbers, and the alliances are helpful until they aren't, right? And because like in any of these, at some point there has to be a betrayal, because the alliance has to break up. But when do you do that betrayal, and how? And like, you don't want to be the last one to think to do the betrayal, but if you do it too early, then you have a target on your back, because no one trusts you. So that is just sort of endlessly interesting to see those dynamics of the collective psychology play out. And then just to sort of wrap up where they leave us, it definitely has the feeling of more of a half season, the way that they end it. But there's more games that happen. There's more voting that happens. Slowly but surely, the X's are gaining in numbers because the prize pool is getting bigger. So as the prize pool gets bigger, more people hit their enough number, quote unquote.
And but that'll probably come to a head.
It does come to a head. I forget after how many games it ends in a tie.
Ooh.
And what's super interesting is in the order of voting, they do it in reverse numerical order. So Gi-yoon is the first person to vote. He's number 456. So he votes first. And the front man is the last person to vote. And so there's 50 O's and 49 X's. But the front man has kind of teamed up with Gi-yoon. And he's been an X, even though the front man, really, you would think he wants the game to continue and wants everyone to die. And but he votes X.
And sorry, X means that they want to...
X means they want the games to stop.
Stop, okay.
And so in like a sort of ultimate disguise, the front man is actually voting against what you think are his true motivations, but he wants. It's unclear exactly what he wants.
Is Guillaume always voting X?
Guillaume is always voting X. He's trying to get everyone to vote X every time.
He's like, you guys, like, save your life.
Right.
Don't do this.
But then the game controllers say, they're like, from this point forward, any act that disrupts the democratic voting process will not be tolerated. Meaning, if you try and like get on the pulpit and try and recruit people or whatever, like they're gonna shoot you for for just like disrupting. Well, okay, you don't know this, but in season, people die when they're playing the games, right? There's red light, green light, and if they're caught moving after the big doll thing says red light, a sniper shoots them from up. And so, like all these people, there's different games and different ways that you die during the games. You fall through the glass or whatever. But in season 1, after a couple games, they discover that if you die in the prison room, in the sleeping room, you also just are eliminated, and
people just kill each other.
So people just kill each other in their sleep, and a huge fight breaks out in season 1 in between the games. Guillaume survived all of that. He won season 1. He goes back into the games, and he doesn't sleep very much in season 2 because he knows that at any point this group of people could discover that they can also kill each other in this sleeping room that's supposed to be like the safe room. And this all comes to a head when they do this vote, and it's a 50-50 tie, and the game controllers go, they're all like, well, now what happens? It's a tie. Do we vote? And they're like, we will vote again. To give you adequate time to consider your options, we will hold the next vote tomorrow morning.
Oh, Jesus.
So they have to spend the night, like, in each other's company, literally split down the middle.
And they all know how other people voted.
And for dinner that night, they do give them a little bit of food and a little bit of drink, like, for their meals. It's usually, like, a sandwich and a bottle of water. Or a little, like, very, like, Korean-looking lunch with like a little bit of rice and an egg and some like kimchi and whatever.
Yep.
And for dinner this night, they gave them like a roll, like a sushi roll thing, and a metal fork.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And so some people were wise enough to keep their fork when they were done. And so a fight breaks out in the bathroom. The bathroom's also like an interesting place. Some shit goes down in the bathroom. But a fight breaks out and someone gets killed, or actually 5 people get killed in this bathroom.
Jesus.
3 O's got killed and 2 X's got killed, which means that the X's have the upper hand. They have one more person than the O's. So if everyone just slept through the night and they did the vote the next morning, the X's would win. And so you see the 2 teams count all this up and realize the O's and the X's both realize the X's outnumber the O's by 1. And so Guillaume tells them, guys, we're going to get ambushed. We're going to get attacked. But we can use this to our advantage because Guillaume's plan this whole time is to shut down the games. He's not trying to win the games.
Right.
He's trying to shut down the games.
And he's not making that known. Like, nobody else knows that that's his goal in the game. Maybe it doesn't matter.
No, I think he does. At this point, he is starting to tell the
number one guy, maybe.
The number one guy for sure is in his kind of closer knit group. And they end up having one of the games, they have a team of 5. So they kind of have like a group of 5. He has another real world friend is in there with him, and the number one guy, and this other ex-Marine guy, and then the pregnant gal. And that is like his kind of group of 5. And then he recruits a couple more. A trans woman who was a soldier in the Korean armed forces. And so she is a total badass.
Sweet.
And so their plan then is they know that they're going to get ambushed by the O's, and Gyun's like, don't fight. What we need to do is we need to hide under the beds. We need to hide under the beds, let the brawl happen, because eventually what's going to happen, because he knows from season 1, is the guards are going to come in and shut down the fight, because they don't want everyone, because they want the billionaires to be betting on the next round of games, so they don't want everyone to die before all the games are done. When the guards come in, that's our time to strike, because the guards are going to be so busy starting to tally up who's been killed that we can take their guns. All we have to do is get one of their guns and then kill the rest of the guards that are in there, and then we have all their guns, and then we can get into the network of the whole building. And so they do that. They do that successfully, and they get the guns, and they infiltrate the whole structure that has this crazy, like, Harry Potter-esque staircase system with all these doors that, like, lead into all these.
Wait, so they are successfully able to get the guns from the guards?
They're able to get the guns, and the trans woman is like, knows what to do, and it tells one person, like, you gather up the rest of the guns and all the ammo and, like, let us know. And they have walkie-talkies now, because the guards had walkie-talkie. Everyone used channel 7. We're all switched to channel 7. And then they go out and they start to, like, try to find the control room, whatever that is. You know, they're like trying to get to the source. And so Gi-yoon is part of this group, and the front man is part of this.
Oh, that's so weird.
Group that's doing a coup. And it gets to a point where Gi-yoon and the front man are separated. They're on separate sides of the staircase, and at the top of the staircase is the control room, and the front man is with 2 other guys, like 2 other contestants, and Gi-yoon can't see, but that's when the front man turns and shows his true colors, and he shoots the other 2 contestants in the back. But he says on the walkie-talkie, they have us pinned down, you know, they just got the other 2 guys, and everyone's running out of ammo. Like, this whole thing, they're all running out of ammo. And basically that's where the season ends.
My gosh.
And so
Gi-yoon is trusting the wrong person.
Yes. Gi-yoon is trusting the wrong person. There's very, like, two-faced thing there. And so, yeah, it leaves the front man's character is a little mysterious, because we saw in the archives that he was in the games years ago, but now he's kind of this guy in control. But then he chose to go back in the game knowing that Gi-yoon was going back in the game. And up until this point, he's been playing to win. Like, he's been and he could have like made Gi-yoon die in the games multiple different ways, but he didn't.
No, he's just intrigued by Gi-yoon is my guess, is that he's just like, you know, like these billionaires that bet, and they're like, whoa, this winner is coming back for a second one. Like, whoa, are you kidding me?
So that's one of the prompts that you gave me to ponder was about power. And, like, how is power distributed? And there's a lot of power dynamics in this show. Yeah. Where, like, the staff of the game, there's 3 different shapes of masks. There's square, triangle, and circle. And the squares are the managers. And, like, the staff have their own rules, and they cannot speak unless their manager has addressed them. So, like, there's a power dynamic there. And the power dynamics among the players, because, like, they all go into this room from all different walks of life. They're all in debt, but, like, they're all wearing the same uniform pajamas. Right. And so on one level, everyone's equal, but then you start to see, like, leaders emerge, people who are more confident or feel like they know a game. They know how to bring the best out of people. They're quick learners and can see where the games are headed. And then there's this power dynamic with nobody wants the old people or the women on their teams, because a lot of times they have them form teams. You need to form a team of 4.
So patriarchy and ageism and whatever are all like,
it all
very
plays.
Much.
And sometimes that kind of pans out for the big strong men when it's but then there's an epic game of tug of war And you'd think you just need the biggest, strongest guys to like win the game of tug of war. But in season 1, the old man knows the strategy of tug of war. And if you alternate players and you tuck the rope in your armpit and you lean back super far, the other team's going to get frustrated and they're going to falter. And in that moment that they falter, that's when you pull.
Yeah.
And they end up winning because of his strategy. And if they hadn't had the old man and just some other strong guy, they might not have won.
Right.
So you love that, right? You love that. It's like,
see those little upsets.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm feeling curious, like, you know, so like when I was a teacher, I would sometimes like lay out information as like, so this is like the what. And then there's like a so what, like, why do we actually care? But then there's like a now what, like now that we know this, like, what do we do? And one of the questions of the Stoner story, which is, you know, what are the stories or characters that are, you know, that are guiding the pathway of your liberation, or maybe that are resourcing you or that are companioning you? Like, you know, I guess I have a question, like, is it Giyun? Is it like what are like the tidbits that you are walking away with, perhaps, as a result of this show?
There's a grappling there that I'm left with of, as I said when we started recording this, what would I do in this situation? I'd like to think that I'd be like Giyun, that I would have the value of human life be the top value that helps guide my decision making. But there's no way to really know unless I was put in the same situation, you know? And so instigates a pondering and a reflection. I think that's the thing, and the other piece of the how much is enough.
Yeah.
The show is a reminder to me that not everybody has the same answer to that question, and for understandable reasons, and also how important it is to try to answer and to get as close to being able to answer that and have a number, or have, it's not always just about money either, right? Like, how much
100%.
how much time is enough time to spend with my kids?
Right.
I know that I want to be a good dad. I want to be a supportive, present father to my kids. But how much quality time with my kids is enough for me to feel good about it? Because if I don't define that, then I'm in an endless deficit of I'm not doing enough with them. Or I'm spending so much time with them that I feel like I'm not doing enough for myself.
Right.
And so that's something that I can define. I can say, granted, it's different when we're like on holidays or whatever, but like when you're in this sort of normal school thing going, and it's like an hour a day, an hour of quality time a day feels like I'm doing a good job. That feels good to me. And I can be okay with it not being any more than that, you know? It could be a half hour. It could be 2 hours. It could be 5 hours a week, however you would want to, you know, and everyone's number is going to be different there, but these things can be defined, and there's a lot of value in then shutting down that decision-making mechanism in your mind, because then you can just devote that brain glucose to other stuff. So it's just a reminder to me of the players that are in this game, in Squid Game, that they have their how much they're in debt number, but it's still like just having all your priorities in order, you know?
Yeah. I have a, you know, when I look at a story, I like to think like, you know, relating it to our world, you know, like, or me, like, am I even in the story? Right. Like, and like we we have been asking ourselves, like, what is enough? And we are, both, we both quit our jobs and have enough resources to be able to be taking like a creative sabbatical, move to Costa Rica, build community here, which is amazing. But like none of the characters in Squid Games are doing that. So like it's like kind of, from what I can see, it's like we are not represented because like, we're definitely not contestants that are so desperate to survive within capitalism that like we are risking.
We don't have warrants out for our arrest.
Yeah, we don't have.
No.
Yeah, nobody's threatening to take our pinkies. We certainly are not billionaires, and we also know that like there is no purity, and it's like we, by virtue of the fact that we can afford to live and not work, is essentially because of inequality that I believe is wrong, like, so there is still like an invitation to grapple here of just being like, okay, who am I like the most, who am I realistically the most like? And it's like, maybe I'm the rich people that like every time I turn on reality TV, like, am I just those rich people like watching people duke it out? Like, I just think like, is that not reality TV a little bit? Like,
that makes me cringe.
Like that's like a role that I play in some contexts. I know that like when Britney Spears's memoir came out or whatever, and like just how much she was exploited when she was, I mean, she's still popular, but like, we can do what we can to like not buy those like tabloid magazines or whatever. Like that there are like ways that I like can opt out, but also like the systems are already there. And so I don't know, like I'm curious and also like, I do love how you've described Giyun's character of just like, I think I do relate to Giyun a little bit, where it's like, I have what I've been trained to want, but I don't want it anymore. Or like, but it's not.
I want something
it's
more
not
important.
enough. I need the whole system that says that we need money in the first place to just like, and in that way, I think like I don't know what else to like Giyun is going back into the games, and I started a podcast about, like anarchy and anti-capitalism and stories and animism. And so I do feel like there's some part of Giyun's fervor that I think resonates with a lot of protagonists that I really identify with. But I'm curious, if I put that question on you, like, how do you locate yourself in the story? Or, like if
I don't locate myself really aligning with any one character, but more so just the themes that the show touches on, and then how do those resonate in my own life. Like, because the show, there's a life or death element to it, right? These players are fighting for their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear about this too, people that study climate disasters or like earthquakes and tornadoes and hurricanes and big catastrophes that people lose their lives, or then all of a sudden they have no power and no water, and like, what happens? What do we do as humans in those situations? And time again, we band together. You see this like humanity come out of people, where we all just realize, wait, everyone's houses just got decimated. Like, we need to group up. And also there's a clarity that I think a lot of people experience when they're near death or when they go through a catastrophe of what's truly important. And in the show, several times, several different characters share why they are, what they are fighting for. What is it that is motivating them to continue? And the one wants to have the baby, and the other one has the sick mom with the hospital bills. And it makes me think about, what am I fighting for? What am I living for? What's important to me? Can I allow the energy of this story that is just using these fictional characters that are on, fighting for their life? Well, can I somehow internalize what that would feel like of Like, what's the thing that's the most important to me?
Right.
And having something to fight for, to live for, can make all the difference.
Mm-hmm. To
so
die for.
Yeah.
In this case, yeah.
And the whole like wanting a better life, wanting more, wanting one more game to just have like a little, it's like this question for myself, like, how far will I go? How far would I go for wanting this like a little bit more? And you know, when is living with what I have better than striving, the trade-off for the aspiring to live in some other way?
Right. Yeah.
Now, in their case, it's choosing between, you know, quite likely dying or, you know, and so, but it's okay. Like, I can still use the energy from this story to like reflect.
Yeah, I like the idea that it's like the energy of the story, or that, you know, like you're, you know, you're not being threatened with death, but like your mirror neurons upon watching this is like a little bit of a maybe memento mori, or like okay, like like I maybe am not going to die today from a game of Red Rover, but like I like if I do die tomorrow, like what would my life have been in service of, or what would my dying days have been like a devotion towards?
100%. And it makes me kind of calibrate or fine tune my inner moral compass. Like, there's things, controversial, highly debated things like the death penalty, for example. There are people that believe in it, there are people that don't, and then there's a middle piece that's like, well, yes, if these conditions are met, if this person committed such a heinous crime that is described in this way, then they would deserve it. But like these other people that did these type of crimes, no. And in Squid Game, there's a question of sacrificing few for the good of the many. And, you know, we saw it very blatantly at the end of season 1 when Sang-woo pushes the guy who can tell the glass apart off the thing. He was sacrificing one person, potentially. He could have 50-50 chance that he was sacrificing him so that the three of them could continue. Because there was a chance that none of them were going to continue if that guy didn't move. But then it's also more subtle, but also there when Gi-yoon is trying to do this coup and grab the guns of the guards and kill the guards and try to get to the control room and kill all the people that are running this game for the good of all the contestants and all the future contestants. Right. But he's still killing some, and it's like, so, you know, but in his mind, that is like justified.
Oh, totally.
He's putting an end to this atrocious game. But yeah, the reflection of, what am I sacrificing, and what are the trade-offs, and is any change really necessary? You know, cause like Gi-yoon wants to make a change, but in order he wants these games are happening right now, and he wants the games to end. But in order for the games to end, a change needs to happen. There needs to be this big disruption. And so, what am I disrupting?
Yeah.
And
ooh, I like that.
What is worth disrupting? What is worth the sacrifice that it will take in order to disrupt what needs to be disrupted?
Yeah. Do you want to answer those questions?
I think there's part of me that wishes I was more like Gi-yoon. I wish I had the courage to devote myself to some big cause in such a big way that he's doing. Like, he's putting his whole life, like every waking moment. He doesn't have family right now. Like, his ex-wife and daughter are gone.
Yeah,
his mom's dead.
Being a good dad to his kid is off the table.
Right.
Like, that is not what he is working towards.
Yeah. And
he's sacrificing that.
He's not trying to make an album or create some paintings or bake bread for his neighbors. Like, he really has a single solitary vision. And while it's kind of sad and like tragic, it's also inspiring because he believes in something in his core, and he's devoting all of his money and all of his time and all of his energy to try to bring his belief to fruition.
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes me want to be more of a soldier for climate change, for example, that I could be devoting more of my time to disrupting the industrialization that's hurtling us towards climate collapse.
Sure.
But I'm not. So maybe I could be more like you. But in my life, and I think in most of our lives, things are not as black and white.
No.
If I were to go Giyun on climate change, then I would never see you, and I would never see the kids, and I would never touch a saxophone, and I would just be doing activist shit all day, every day.
Right. And it's I think there's, when you look at activism and collapse, and like certain things do need to collapse, but then we also like need something new to come in. I think that's what, like, Giyun can destroy the Squid Games, but within the system that created the Squid Games, there will just be another. Yeah. Like those billion, like if you destroy, like there's, like in The Wire, right? It's like, oh, you can like take down all the key players, but then like in that vacuum that is then created, something new is going to come. It's like you can't only be fighting that which you don't want. You have to be like creating that which you would prefer. And so it's like, okay, sure, we could go and like move to DC and just like be protesting outside of Congress, or like whatever you think it would be that you would need to do more of to be a climate soldier, as you put it. It's like, or I can just be in a practice of how can I increase my joy, increase my contentment, find satiation in really like, and this is Carmen's husband, Ruben Anderson, like in a small and delicious way. And so it's like, I am not like, I am trying to find, like, I am finding a lot of joy. I'm finding a lot of connection and community in my sourdough practice, so that like, I don't really need to like go spend a lot of money and gas emissions to go on some like super cool vacation to like see some, like, we live in a really amazing place, and certainly we do still spend money. We do still have gas emissions or whatever, but it's like, can I try to every year be like, what's a little bit less that I can extract, a little bit less that I can exploit, a little bit less harm that I can do, and or how can I increase like my satiation, my enjoyment, my contentment in like the small and delicious things. Because I think it's really easy to like see stories like this and see like where people are like just like going so big and think that like that's the only way to do things. Again, that's like the purity. That's this, like, in order for me to be good, in order for me to like disrupt, it's like actually one of the most disruptive things that I can do is to just say, I'm not going to be a cog in the machinery of capitalism. I'm going to go pick up my saxophone. I'm going to make some sourdough. I'm going to play with my kids. And again, those are really, really good choices that we have from our positionality within capitalism with levels of privilege that certainly a lot of people don't have access to, and also a lot of people do have access to, but they've convinced themselves, like we did too, like before we quit our jobs, we were asking ourselves like, oh my gosh, what does it like, who am I if I am not a profession? Like that's just a thing that I do, but I am not a teacher. Like I am Kristen, like first and foremost, right? Like, and so I think like a lot of these like hero's journey stories can sometimes make us feel like there's like this all or nothing. And I think it's a lot there's a lot more gray area than Squid Games wants us to see too, you know?
I love the focus on how can I increase my satiation and joy, not just fight and dismantle.
Right. Like maybe one of the best things I can do for the climate is go to couples counseling. So then like you and I can have like a really good marriage, a really strong relationship, that I am not so dysregulated from my marriage that I then go have to do like a bunch of online shopping to try to, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because, you know, I just think of like a lot of the consumption that we do is like how much of the consumption that we do is because of nervous system dysregulation or the urge to need to travel. But it's like, oh my gosh, if you and I can just like every so often just like go to the beach and just like have like a really nice time, like I don't need to hop on a plane to go somewhere with you, because like I can feel, you know, we can have novel conversations about Squid Games in our house, and I can feel really close and connected to you, and like we went on a journey together without, and we didn't have to hop on a plane for this.
Go to some fancy restaurant.
Or go to some fancy restaurant. Although I also love it when other people cook for me. So, you know, it's like there is no perfection. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess like, do you have hopes for the next season? Hopes, dreams, not even so much predictions, but I think like, you know, if there's like a seed we're planting here.
Well, just based on where the story is right now at the end of season 2, I have a hard time imagining that there would be more than a season 3. It just seems like things have already come to such a head that I kind of hope that season 3 is the last season, and they just, if not, that means that Gi-eun hasn't succeeded and there's more Squid Games happening, and I just don't want the billionaires to be continuing to succeed for that long.
We want the resistance to succeed, right?
Right. Yeah. I do expect that at some point the detective and the front man will meet again, and it will be revealed to the detective that his brother was in the game, and hopefully we hear from the front man why he stuck around and what was the deal with him being in the games in the past, and was it actually about his wife, and there's like some resolution about his story, because there's still an element of intrigue and uncertainty right now. I mean, wouldn't it be great if somehow Gi-eun gets out of this all alive and the game's dismantled and he's able to go live in California and live in the same town as his ex-wife and their kid and the stepdad, and like at least like be able to see her a couple times a month kind of thing. I mean, that's like the dream mode of what the reward that Gi-eun would get for being the one person that's trying to just save innocent people's lives and screw it to the billionaires who are just trying to use them as animals. So yeah. Wait, you said the question for me was not what am I hoping, or what was your question?
You see, like, yeah, like what does, I mean, I think it's like, when I was asking it for Severance, it was, you know, like, what are our hopes for collective liberation for the innies? You know, like, I want Gi-eun to feel some satiation. I want him to, like, connect with his daughter. Because, like, I mean, as someone who lost my dad when I think you said his daughter was like about 10.
Yeah.
I mean, I was about 12 when my dad died. And like, I don't want her to grow up with that. Like, I'm feeling for Gi-eun's daughter. I'm like, no, go back to your daughter. You know, like, I want him to reconnect with a creative practice. I want him to pick up that saxophone. I want him to be like, great. You know, making kimchi for his neighbors or whatever.
You know, what would be great is if somehow they get to the billionaires and they like make the billionaires play the game. And we get to watch them be so scared and so afraid for their lives because we see them like wearing these golden masks and like having servants like pour them wine and stuff, and like just the utmost opulence, and it would feel really tasty to just see them suffer.
Yeah.
Which is kind of twisted to admit, but it's like,
But I mean,
it feels
yeah.
like it's what they deserve.
Because of their complacency, right? Because of their well, complicity, I guess. Like they're actually
yes.
guilty. But I mean, and sorry, I'm going to draw a connection to, again, I don't know that I've done a single episode since that insurance CEO was assassinated, but it's like these things do like there are real life Giyuns or, you know, people that are like, there are very real positions of power that should not exist, and there are humans that deserve to live, but that they are in these roles that like we cannot stand for. And like you say, like you want the billionaires to be shaken in their boots. Like, you know, I know I've like seen memes that are like, we want more CEOs in these powerful positions, oil companies and insurance companies or whatever. We want more of them to consider like, maybe my safety is threatened, when like we are really creating like an unsafe, unequal, harm-filled world for so many people. It's like, I don't wish anybody to be killed, but it would be nice if there could just be a little bit more of like an invitation to like see that like it isn't just a job that you have, right? Like you're not just some CEO. That's not just something that you've worked hard to earn. Like there are very real like effects when you are valuing, you know, stakeholders over people's lives. So I agree, and I see that there are parallels here, and I think it's really, I think stories are really interesting because stories can get us to like sink our teeth into this radical idea that you just shared of like, I want the billionaires to be scared. I want the billionaires to play the game. I want the billionaires to, you know, like be gunned down, or, you know, like what, because it's like you get so wrapped up. Like I feel solidarity with these people that I am like, I know I'm not in that story. Like I know Squid Games is not about me. I've never been that desperate that I would be in the Squid Games to begin with. So I'm able to feel a level of solidarity that then when a CEO of an insurance company is gunned down by an assassin who was like, I was going to use a bomb, but I didn't want there to be any other casualties. I wanted to only get my target, you know, like, and it's just like, well, shit, like I'm grappling, you know, like, it's like, I don't want to be pro anybody dying. I just want there to be less harm in the world. And when there are people that are like complicitly taking on these roles of power that are killing people, like, you know, there's peaceful protests haven't been working. So yeah, I think there's something really exciting about stories like Squid Games, as well as like a lot of the romantasy that I'm getting into also, which there's a connection I was going to make with I'm realizing that, you know, like we didn't talk a whole lot about secure attachment or well, I mean, I don't know, we did like a little bit of like a dive into some of the characters. But I just think that like, yeah, I just think that a lot of the stories, whether it's a romance or whether it's, you know, Squid Games is not like, maybe there's like some romantic, you know, subplots or, you know, like that there's like some side love stories or whatever. But like this idea of Giyun starting off season 1 kind of being a bum, ending season 1 like being like totally like in his purpose. And then we see in season 2 like he is not the bum. Like you said, he has been working hard. We have never seen Giyun this motivated. And I also love too, I wanted to say this when you first mentioned it, but like, I love that there's a 3-year time lapse, right? That it's like, I like when, I mean, and I think when we consume stories, we sometimes forget that like, okay, season 1 took place over the span of what, maybe a couple weeks. Like the actual like episode 1 to episode 2 was like a couple weeks, and then season 2 is maybe also we're only seeing like a couple weeks, but like the majority of that time is just Giyun waking up, sitting at his computer, and probably many of those days he's like are dead ends. Right? Like there is like a fucking slog, and like we never see those movies. Like I've been thinking a lot about like how shows and books or whatever, like they do these time warps. Like of course the stories are only going to be like the most monumental bits, but a lot of times it's like you have to train to become that, skilled with daggers or, like whatever it is that like you need to do in that story, fly or ride a dragon or whatever. And it's like, it took him 3 years. That's a big fucking deal. We haven't even lived in Costa Rica for 3 years. Like I've only been.
They could have at least done a montage.
It could have at least done a montage. Yeah, but I know exactly, because that's like the time warps are always hidden in like these montages, right? So I think that, but it's like we see a lot there in just his development from like not really being motivated to do anything, and then he's so motivated. And I think a lot of times in like romance, if we can think of these things symbolically, right? That it's like he's finally finding like what matters to him, the world that he wants, what it is he's reaching for, what it is that he wants to commit his one wild and precious life to. And I think the same is true in like in like these romance genres. It's like this person that is like signifying this deep yearning, and then with that person brings you like all this clarity of who am I, what matters to me, what is it that I'm working towards, and I have a companion that is like resourcing me in that. Anyway, so that's a weird connection that I'm making from like Squid Games to romantasy, but I just think that like so many stories are about this like this connection to something greater, and I think we see that then when you say that all those people voted in season 1 to go back, like all but 5 or something like that, when they all said they wanted to stop the game, but then like 2 weeks later they're like back in it. I remember reading some essay from a former soldier. I don't remember. I don't remember it, but they were talking about like when they were serving, they felt really alive. They felt like, I have a mission. I have, like there's so much clarity and coherence when you're in the armed forces of like, like what your objective is. You wake up every morning, you're working towards it, you're doing the thing. And then there's like a shock. Then when you like go back home and you're living that civilian life, and then it's like, so every day I just like make food and eat the food and be with my family and like go to work and wait, like what, like what, but like what's the larger thing? You're like, what is it that I'm actually working towards? And so I think that there is.
What do we do at 0700?
Right. And so I don't know. It also feels like, like those games, as morbid as it is like an invitation to all of those characters, like in a morbid way. Like it did give Gi-yoon his purpose. A lot of people had to die to get him there. I don't know. I just said a lot of words, but how does it feel just like chatting with me for almost 2 hours now about Squid Games?
I mean, it's a show that I really liked, so
Yeah.
I enjoyed the chance to air out my reflections of this art that I consumed. And I would say I'm a little bit impressed with your ability to dig into a show that you've never watched with energy and passion and some clarity with very little input. So well done.
Well, yeah, I it's my hope that, taking the time to talk to you, you matter to me. And it sounded like Squid Games mattered to you. And so it's like, let's talk about this thing that matters to you. And like what, like if Squid Games were a story that was told around the fire, that was like, like by some wise elder that's trying to like grant you some wisdom, like what's the seed of wisdom that Squid Games is trying to like plant in you? And it sounds to me like, the question of like, what can I disrupt? Like what matters to me, or what's enough? I mean, oh my gosh, those are like some really radical questions to be asking. And like, if any one of those billionaires in that room could wake up in the morning and be like, what can I disrupt? What's enough for me? What matters to me? What do I want my life to be in service of? I think that's really profound.
They teach you in sales the importance of asking good questions, not just asking discovery questions, but the value of a well thought out question. And those questions that you just rattled off are some good ones.
I believe you said them. They were good ones. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm really excited that we planted those questions, and we'll continue on the journey of what other stories are coming our way. And yeah, excited to have you back on I'm just really excited. That of all the podcasts that I've done, I did like 0 minutes to prepare for this episode. I would say typically for every episode of a podcast that I have, there's probably like at least 10 hours of brain glucose that have gone into like thinking through what that episode might have. And so this just feels really, really juicy. And it's my hope that you felt seen. It's my hope that you felt like that you matter to me, and that you're resourced in some way to disrupt and find meaning, be in choice, find some satiation, all that good stuff. So,
well, thank you, and you're welcome.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. And thank you so much to Kevin for all the work that you put into in creating the outline and helping develop kind of the themes, and all the work that you put into the editing of this podcast. And certainly I also want to thank the work of Toy Smith, who I will reference in the show notes as well, who's been a really big part of me investigating my tendencies in capitalistic thinking, and certainly also Carmen Spagnola and her work on attachment and contact nutrition. And actually there's a podcast that I referenced of her and Toy Smith on her podcast talking about that, like, what is enough? What is your enough number? And that was really a really big pivot for me. I know when I listened to it several years ago. And then certainly just inspired by the hashtag small and delicious life that was coined by Ruben Anderson. I have a link to his blog. And he and Carmen talk a lot about the small and delicious life. And they have a course together called Collapse 101 on the Numinous Network that I highly, highly recommend for people that are kind of, living into that question of how do I create that world that I want and enough safeness in amidst all the absurdity of what it is to be alive this day and age in late stage racialized capitalism at the end of empire. So big thanks to all my teachers, big thanks and hugs to Kevin, and thank you all for listening. It has been an absolute pleasure and a delight to bring this to you. And I want to thank Matt Schubbe for the podcast art, my husband Kevin Carlo for all his help in the creation of the theme song for the podcast, and Aeneas Mitchell and John Williams for their inspiration of Hedwig's theme and Hadestown. And before I sign off, I would like to leave you with a quote from another one of my teachers, Rev. Angel Kyoto Williams, who says, "Love and justice are not two. Without inner change, there can be no outer change. And without collective change, no change matters."